Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Make Things Better podcast. Today I have Nathan Fulwood, founder of Create Future, to talk to us about Create Future and also brand Archetypes. So thanks for coming on, Nathan. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. It's really nice to meet you, Tom. Thanks for asking me on.
Well, yeah, cheers for coming on. And I'm quite excited to talk to you today about various things. So first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up setting up Create Future?
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. Yeah, so my background is I got into internet and digital quite early. I'll not share my age, but I'm advancing in years. And when I went to university, I in the States, I kind of got an email address there, and I didn't know anybody else with an email address, so kind of got into the internet very early. Started working on it around like 1999 in terms of a job. I worked for the Press Association. I worked for Orange, and I helped Orange launch a lot of their first kind of digital products. Then I moved into agency, and I've been in agency sort of side for over 20 years. I moved up to Edinburgh, and I was working in one of Scotland's biggest and helped grow one of Scotland's big digital agencies over the course of about 10 years. And then myself and a little bit of a diversion, but then after a couple of years, myself and a couple of colleagues and friends, we decided to set up Create Future. We were a little bit frustrated by a couple of things that we were seeing, and in the sort of like the client agency relationships, we thought there was probably a bit of a better way to do it, to be a little bit more agile, a bit more collaborative. And so we wanted to try that. And we kind of brought our respective skills in brand and service design and creative direction together, and threw our hats into the ring, and never looked back.
Yeah, so what is it specifically that Create Future do? So you mentioned service design and brand there. They're the two main aspects then?
Yeah, there's three main aspects to Create Future. We're a design and innovation company. So we work across brand, we work across product and proposition, and we work across experience design. And so the challenges are in those kind of areas. And we work we're based in Edinburgh. There's about 17 of us, 18. We've made a couple of hires, so I've lost count recently. And we work all across the world, really. Lucky to have kind of clients. We're working in the States at the moment. But clients include people like Adidas and Penguin Random House, a lot of financial services clients, a few drinks, big whiskey brands, and so on. So it's a nice mix of clients. Yeah, but it tends to fall in those areas: brand, product, and experience design.
Yeah, I was just reading that Adidas case study actually on your website. It looked quite interesting. Can you tell us briefly about that?
Yeah, that's a nice example of what I was talking about, really, in terms of the way that we wanted to work, being a little bit differently. So everything that we do is underpinned by design thinking. So the principles of design thinking, and particularly around, collaboration, bringing a team together from the client side and from ours to work really closely on the project, in terms of rapid prototyping. And getting lots of kind of iterative testing to get to a solution. And customer centricity, really kind of putting the needs of the customer at the heart of anything that you're designing. And sprints, design sprints are a really good way of doing that. We, in the olden days, we used to kind of like lock ourselves in a room for 5 days, and we go from having an understanding of a problem right through to kind of prototyping something and testing it with clients within 5 days. And there's obviously research that goes into before that, and there's a lot of work afterwards to make sense of the solution that you've proposed. But that's really the heart of it. And on that, we've been through that process a few times with Adidas, looking at how they sell hype, how they build and sell the kind of the trainers in the hype sort of lines, through to how they use user-generated content. Yes, they've been a good client for a number of years. And it's also one of the other aspects of us is that we're kind of a very open book to when we work. So that collaboration is important. So it's really nice to see actually a lot of the practices that we introduce and the approaches and methodologies that clients then pick up, and they start using that language and they start using those processes and approaches as well. So kind of always trying to leave the client in a better place and teach them something while they're working with us.
Yeah, that's certainly something that I think we try and do as well at Hive IT. That's something that I've found is that we'll go and work with a client, and then we'll kind of pass on a certain strategy. Maybe it's like user research or something else. And then it kind of means that that work is going to have an impact on them for quite a long time as well. So obviously Adidas are a huge brand, a great example. But let me ask you, so why is branding important?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've been thinking about it before coming into the podcast. There's a number of reasons. The one that the most compelling for me is, like, you know, in terms of particularly why you're asking a client to invest in brand. There's so many reasons, but the one I think that often lands best is that brand, investing in a brand, is a good way to move the conversation away from price. So, like, if you've got like for like products, then 9 times out of 10, you know the customer's going to go for the cheapest. You know, it obviously makes sense to to do that. So unless you're bringing in and you're asking the client to, the customer to consider other factors, like quality and reliability, look and feel, and what else that product is going to do for them in their life. Marketing can sell those features and benefits for a product, but if you develop and you invest in your brand, you kind of reinforce those qualities of, say, kind of quality or reliability or style across everything that you do, every product, every interaction. So then you cut out a large piece of that buying cycle. You cut out the consideration phase almost entirely if you build a really strong brand and a really strong brand relationship with your consumers. You become a go-to brand. You buy Levi's because Levi's got a reputation for style and for quality and durability, so you don't even bother look at any other brands of jeans, and you're less concerned about how much that pair of jeans kind of costs. So that's a lot of the time is how we can rationalize investing in brand. The other is that it's a good investment and it helps you get more from your marketing spend, and lots of studies that have shown over time that if you invest in long-term brand building, you will see your return on investment on your marketing effort kind of go up. And then finally, just a really important one, I think, it's around your employee brand as well. Is your brand positioning, your brand to your customers, should be well aligned, internally and externally. So you're getting into things like your brand purpose, the missions and the values. Everything that you tell your customer, your staff need to to believe and to feel and be motivated by two. Otherwise there's that sense of inauthenticity. But if they believe it and they live it, then they're much more willing to kind of support you in the mission and what you're trying to achieve. They're going to feel that they belong there. You can be more invested in your success. I was catching up with a friend actually recently who works for Doc Martens, and I was asking how he was enjoying working there, and he was saying he's really enjoying it. It's great, and saying it's the most diverse and most inclusive place he's ever worked. He walks around, he's got really diverse workforce, people dressed in all kind of styles of there's absolutely, as you wouldn't expect, no dress code. He's working with colleagues of all sorts, gender diversity, racial diversity, sexual diversity, and you would expect that from a brand like Dr. Martens, because they're born of punk, and it's great that I don't even know what they're worth. They IPO'd recently, and billions they're worth, but still at their heart got that punk ethos, and it's reflected in the the way that they treat people at work and allow people to express their individuality. So I think it's really important to have that brand authenticity inside and out.
Yeah. So do you think there's much of a difference between a brand, like a business's brand, and a business's identity?
When there is a big difference, I think it's, as I say, it comes back to that authenticity. There's often a problem. We just like when we meet people who are trying to pretend to be something that they're not, you can sniff it out kind of pretty quickly. So it's a bit like Emperor's New Clothes. It's sort of, unless it is authentic and you've been through a process, you believe in it and you actually kind of live those values and you live that brand, then it falls apart kind of very quickly. For one thing, customers just really won't buy into it, but also the people who are there to express it, your teams and your staff, they will struggle to know really what they're supposed to be doing with it, start to put their own spin on it, and really kind of starts to fall apart.
Yeah. So perhaps that's why like a business like Doc Martens, if they've got people who are reflecting their brand at the real heart and center and the core of their business, that kind of works really well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So how does a business actually like discover its personality and what they want to get across through their branding?
Yeah. Again, another kind of good question. In some cases it's relatively easy. Maybe with you have a company that's maybe has a strong founder person at the heart of his personality. Often a company will borrow the brand personality of that individual. And you maybe see that in the case of something like in the early days of Virgin with Richard Branson. The brand is very similar to kind of the personality at the heart of it. But that's kind of rare. I would say like more often than not, it's like a little bit harder and requires some shaping, but it's definitely shaping. It's kind of like revealing that brand personality rather than trying to force a brand personality on an organization. So I see brand very much as kind of a conversation. There has to be this overlap between your brand personality and your customers. So what does the brand need? What do your customers need from you? Is it excitement? Is it reliability? Is it love? Is it kind of support? And often that need that your customer has, or the way that the customer that they want to be made to feel by you, will influence the kind of brand personality that you occupy. So that's often a kind of really good starting point. And that is, why I kind of like sort of brand archetypes as a tool, and getting, as we said, we're going to talk about those, in terms of kind of finding that kind of core personality type, and occupying that in when you're having those conversations with your clients. And then in behaving that way, you draw a lot of people who are attracted to that type of personality, or like to see that sort of facet of their personality in themselves. The way that Harley Davidson, is a classic rebel brand, and attracts people who kind of, whether they're 50-year-old overweight guys, like, never been in a, not particularly rebellious in other aspects of their life, they will, they'll be attracted to this because, they want to still feel like they've got like a rebellious aspect to their character. Yeah, so they'll choose to ride a Harley Davidson.
Yeah. And I think like that was a good point you made about how often the brand will reflect kind of the founder's personality to some extent. Probably not so much nowadays, as businesses obviously have just like got so big and there's so many people involved. But I think I did read something at one point about sort of like Steve Jobs and Apple, and like how Steve Jobs is sort of simplicity and it's like extreme intense focus on design and making that simple, and then how Apple users will sort of purchase Apple products because they want to have that identity. And you have like the I as well, like, in iPhone, iMac, whatever else. iMac, did I just say that? Is that's the thing, is it?
It was a product, yes. Yeah, probably before your time, to be honest. But Mac was their kind of what they kind of really made their name for. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I was worried then that I'd like got that wrong. So obviously you have MacBooks now. But yeah. Anyway, all of that kind of like individuality, and that I kind of being the main part of that.
Yeah. We're getting a little bit into brand identity there, past personality, but when you're getting those, again with brand, it's consistency as well. Like, so if you can define that brand personality so that you, whether, you find that kind of personality type, whether it's, and there's lots of different models, but let's say if you take a Jungian approach, there's 12 different personality types. Everybody's different. Like everybody under the sun has got different personality, but there are roughly 12 personality types. From hero to sage to engineer, creator, explorer. And so if you can identify that kind of type, then that's useful, and everybody kind of gets behind that and understands, okay, we behave in this kind of like explorer way, which means that, we're always looking to kind of like take our customers somewhere and give them new experiences, things that they would maybe, not be able to do before, So it's then allows you to act a little bit more consistently, because brand, I think, is about showing up and being consistent, and using things like, the eye is a good example there. That's developing salience and consistency. So when you see that, the eye before a product, it's from Apple, and that Apple is a great kind of creator brand that is going to enable me to kind of create things that, be creative and do things that I hadn't before, as well as obviously, Apple's association with elegant design and quality of manufacture, simplicity, these kind of things. And they're the things, as you say, that customers are drawn to. So drawn to that by the brand, drawn to that by the identity, and as I was saying before, then they've built that preference. They choose, I'm not even going to look at PCs. I'm just going to buy whatever Apple puts out, not just because of the ecosystem around it, but because I trust that brand. And in buying that brand, I'm kind of saying a little something about myself as well that I want to see in myself.
Yeah.
Which again,
absolutely.
This is all the good reasons to invest in building a strong brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. So can you tell us what are brand archetypes? Because I read that blog that you wrote, I think a year ago now. It was quite a while ago, maybe even longer, but I thought it was a really good blog.
Yeah, as I said, just quite simply, brand archetypes are a way. Carl Jung, philosopher, introduced it previously. That there are kind of 12 common archetypes, so these unconscious groupings that we place individuals into, sort of based on their characteristics and behavior. There's lots of different variations, as I said, but kind of commonly, if I just list them: outlaw, magician, hero, lover, jester, and everyman, caregiver, ruler, creator, innocent, sage, and explorer. And even as I'm saying that, as soon as I say that, these associations come straight to mind, if the kind of person that's likely to be, and also the kind of brands that sort of jump into your mind when you say that. Like, beauty brands often kind of occupy a sort of lover space because they make us feel, desirable. You have brands like Dove, which are in a kind of a more innocent space, because they're kind of very clean and pure and offer us kind of like safety. And a brand like maybe Microsoft in a kind of, which actually occupies, often is more commonly that a brand might occupy a couple of spaces. Like Microsoft, I think, is a classic kind of like sage and kind of like an engineer type archetype. So as I say, they're kind of really, really useful. And I find that, doing a little bit of work to try and find, after speaking to clients' teams, after speaking to customers, after seeing where there's an opportunity in a market to differentiate, I find archetypes a really useful starting off point for when you're building a brand. And once you've kind of found that, people just get it really quickly. They go, yes, we're definitely, we're an everyman brand. We're here for everybody, properly accessible, talking a simple language. I get it. And it really then makes honing things, other useful tools like brand values, principles, tone of voice, and eventually, obviously, kind of campaigns, content creation, all of that, a lot easier, I find, once you've agreed on one of these kind of core archetypes.
Yeah, and I guess this kind of applies to most of branding in general, but I suppose that also gives the business or the company to gives it kind of almost like a pillar to kind of fall back to, something to revert back to, like a core principle. And then you can kind of question, okay, is this design expressing this brand archetype, whatever that may be?
Absolutely. Going back to the rebel thing, if you say, we're a rebel brand, well, what are you rebelling against? How can you substantiate that? What change are you really fighting for in the world? And then if you're, as I say, if you're planning on building a product or putting a campaign out, is this different? Is this really pushing anything? Is this changing anything in the world? So as you say, they really should be useful. Heuristics is a fancy way of saying it, but kind of shortcuts, to sort of just keep referring back to and think, are we acting in a way that's consistent with decisions that we made previously about how we wanted to behave? So
yeah, that does make sense. And I imagine that's really, really useful for companies. So how does a company get its personality across then through their branding?
Oh, it's everything. It's every single touch point. And that's the importance of kind of getting it right and making sure that everybody internally understands it before you start trying to live it externally. Clearly, it will come across in your visual identity. So once you've got that personality, you can think about, the images that you use, the typefaces and fonts that you use, and obviously into the language that you use and the way that you speak, the tone of voice, getting those across in all of your kind of marketing material. But equally then into, I know Hive, you do a lot of kind of like UX design as well. It's you can take that brand personality and translate it into experience principles or UX principles that will really shape the way you design the journeys. If you say that you're a kind of like occupying that engineer space or the sage sort of space, then in those journeys, are you giving the user like a lot of confidence that everything is really highly engineered as you go through, but versus an innocent one, you might strip everything back and just ask as few questions as possible. So it comes across in all those ways, every single and then offline as well, the way that you treat people, and the nature of the conversations and interactions that you have. So it really should sit, that personality and those kind of core brand values should really influence everything that and every customer interaction, which is a bit of a fluffy answer, bit of a get out, but it really is the case, because if you're acting in one way in your marketing campaigns, for instance, or in one channel, but then you're not acting in a consistent way in another channel, and that's very, very damaging for the way that someone perceives your brand. Because as I say, it should all really be about consistency, and that consistency has to build up over time to build that kind of loyalty and preference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when it comes to branding as well, you'd like to see a brand that has integrity. And if there's aspects going on within the business internally that other people aren't seeing, that does not align with the general like idea and the brand archetype and just the brand in general, then that misalignment is going to result in a difference between that identity and the brand and what's being presented, and it's just going to be there's going to be a complete lack of integrity there.
Exactly. Integrity and consistency. And, again, as I said, internally, having a strong brand, both personality and a brand mission, means that everybody should be moving in the same direction. And you may diverge a little bit, because people have their different ways of doing it. But if everybody kind of understands we act in this way, we behave in this way, and we're headed in this general direction, then you will move much more effectively, towards where, whatever that mission is, whatever you're trying to achieve. Yeah.
So I've got one more final question for you, which is a little bit more abstract, a bit more broad, and I hope you're able to come up with something on the spot, because I don't think I'll prep you for it. But what can people do to make things better?
To make things better. Okay. Oh, there's two ways you can answer. There's a couple of ways you can interpret even just those few words, isn't it? So, I mean, I would love to say, I would love to like hand on heart say, create future, that we're here to make the world a better place. Like, but the truth of the matter is that, we're in this obviously with our clients to help them have successful businesses, kind of make money. And, and I hope we do leave, as I said, we certainly try to leave our clients' teams in a better place. Certainly we aim to do no harm. We leave our teams in a good place, I think, when we work with them, and especially the work we're trying to do is the best work that we possibly can, especially if you take the work in financial services, for example, if we help create a better products in financial services, then they help people feel more secure, they help enjoy better retirement, makes their money savings go further. So that, I guess, hopefully the work that we do leaves the world in a better place for that. But I think I kind of, for me and for everyone that kind of create future, I think whatever you're making, has to be done while treating people well, right? Really, you can build something, and break people at the same time, and that's not right, So we certainly don't have like, we've got to where we are now, a successful agency with kind of great clients doing great work, without breaking people. We don't have a crunch culture, everybody's well-being here is like vitally important. So I think that's probably, so when I started, like, I was really worried before starting this business that I kind of, this is my first business, and that was kind of too nice, that I didn't have that entrepreneurial killer instinct that, they say that you have to, put work before everything, and, just smash your goals and all that. And this just really hasn't been my attitude. And I've learned over time that you don't need it, and it's not healthy. You will make better things if people feel valued, if they feel psychologically safe, if they feel included, if they feel respected, and you'll have a better time doing it. So that's how I think you make things better, by treating people well.
Yeah, I think that was like your third main like principle on your website as well. I noticed that, which was about having that like internal sort of friendly work environment.
Yeah. Fun, fast, and collaborative. There are main values, and that applies internally and externally. We have fun while we're doing work, and that we work fast, delivering values quickly, testing and learning as we go, and then collaboration as well. But yeah, again, within all of that, it's about kind of really just treating people well. Because so there's no point doing it if you're going to break people along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are seeing in general throughout society like a bit more of a shift, at least to the mindfulness of this kind of logic being applied in businesses, fortunately.
Yeah, hopefully, and over time, there's more and more kind of metrics and studies that show it's like a more efficient and effective way. There'll always be bad workplaces, and there'll always be bad managers, but yeah, hopefully over time, we'll be on the people who treat people well will be on the right side of history.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, Nathan. You've been
it's a pleasure to speak to you. Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. Yeah, anytime.
I've really enjoyed it. And where can people find Create Future and maybe your business on social media as well?
You can come up to Edinburgh. You can find us in person in Edinburgh. Come and drop in for a coffee. But yeah, createfuture.com. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I'm really happy to connect with anybody individually if they want to chat and take any of this further. So, all right, Tom. We'll pass my regards to everybody at Hive.
Will do. All right. Thanks a lot for coming on, and thanks for listening. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.